it's Romania Black, and we are starting a brand new series. It's not a long series, but it is a long series. We're doing Pluto by Urasawa. So if you don't know who Urasawa is, over the last, 74 weeks, I've been watching Monster week to week by them. It was a series that was created in the 90s. The anime is in the early 2000s. It's amazing. Monster is, the character work is so good in Monster. I cannot recommend it enough. And after finishing that series, it was a few months ago that I saw that Pluto was coming out. And I was like, oh, I really want to watch that, but I didn't really have time in my schedule. So I'm like, I will wait until I finish Monster. And then when I do, I'm going to start Pluto because it's only 8 episodes. It sounds so small. You're like, oh, only 8 episodes, until you realize the episodes are like an hour long. So this is kind of like a full series condensed down into 8 episodes. And I'm really excited by the prospect of 8 feature-length episodes because it's kind of like watching a movie each week, which is insane. I'm also incredibly aware of how daunting this may be because if you've seen my Monster reactions, Urasawa has a lot packed in a very short amount of time that lends to a lot being discussed. So this 1 hour episode, or an hour and 11 minutes, however long it is, may be a lot of discussion. So that's great. But I'm starting this. I haven't asked anybody if I can watch the OP or ED. I'm assuming it's fine. If it starts to seem kind of spoilery, I'll look away. But and just kind of talk to you all while it's playing until it's over. I might do that for the first episode anyway because nobody said anything yet. So, but I'm really excited. Urasawa as a mangaka is really good at writing characters and getting you invested in them in a short amount of time. So I'm really excited that we have 8 episodes, 8 feature length, basically like, 9 hours of content to get through with this series to see what all is going on. And plus, it'll be really cool to see an Urasawa work that's animated in 2024 or 2023 and not, 20 years prior, which Monster's animation is great. So basically this intro is for me to plug Monster. My reactions are on this channel, go find them, go watch them. They're great. I love them. I love this series. So I'm excited to dive into Pluto. But yeah, I decided, I'm like, when I'm done with Monster, I'm going to watch Pluto, and here we are. So, do I know anything about this series? No. I know absolutely nothing. And do I want it that way? Yes. So, if you can do me a solid before we start, please no spoilers. Please don't tell me any hints, clues of what's to come. I'm going to try to have a moderator for this series to make sure nobody is giving away things that are going to happen because I'm watching this series for the first time, and I would like to experience it as you all experienced it as well. So, do me a solid and we'll be good there. But I'm excited. So I got my coffee already. I'm so set to go. Let's do this. So I don't know what all I'm diving into in this hour-long featurette, but we're going to find out. So strap in, y'all. I hope y'all are ready. But we're going to start Pluto, episode 1, and see what we get. We're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's just dive in. I don't think this discussion will be as long as the reaction, but who knows? Oh my god! Whoa! Oh my god! How does Urasawa do it? How do they manage? I've watched Monster, okay? And like I said in the intro, Monster is a masterclass of character work. Like, Urasawa has this ability to create these characters that in a very short amount of time, he gets you so invested in them that you're like, oh, I want to know everything about this character. I want to follow them through an entire series. I would watch a whole damn series of North number 2 and Duncan just having little adventures in their house. I'd watch a whole 70 episode series about that, of them getting to know each other and talking through their trauma and their experience and relating to one another. Why? I was kind of getting to be about halfway through Duncan and North number 2's story, I was like, okay, we're focusing a lot on this in the second half. So why? What's the point? And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. North number 2 is probably one of those 6 robots that is being destroyed. And then when they mentioned the storm, I was like, oh my God, the storm's going to come and destroy North number 2. And we just got to where we liked them. Urasawa is not afraid to just take your heart and just crush it into 1,000 pieces. And I was like, no. And the poetic thing of it is that we get to see as the audience, something is up. The storm, something is happening. But the thing of it is that Duncan can't see, so he can't, even if Gessick gets to interview him or interrogate him, he's not going to be able to know because he can't see anything. Oh my God. Oh my God. But there were several references that I was like, okay, there's so many elements of the story that are so freaking cool so far. We're an eighth of the way through. This definitely feels like they could have, if they wanted to, they could have made this into like a 24 episode series. I feel like they could have. They could have made 24, like 22-minute episodes if they wanted to, if they were really thinking about it. But then again, I'm glad they do it in this format, because that whole entire storyline with Duncan, I was like, yes, absolutely. Plus, I feel like in the manga version of this, it might be like there's 8 episodes. I'm wondering if there are 8 volumes. And so it's like a volume per, because the way this ended where we meet Adam, the way that this volume ended meeting Adam, it seemed like the ending of a manga volume. It just had that feel, right? It just had that feel. This whole thing felt like a manga volume, and I love that. I'm like, yes, absolutely. You get Adam, I think of, Adam and Eve. I also think of Atomic Bomb. So you have Adam. There's also, in the 1950s, there was Osamu Tezuka. They had a series called Astro Boy. It was kind of like futuristic sci-fi. It makes me think of the Jetsons. But was one of the characters called Adam, maybe, that kind of looked like this kid? Maybe. I don't know. I don't want to know too much. I know Osamu Tezuka because they're like a famous mangaka, but I don't know a whole lot about Astro Boy. Astro Boy is one of those things that even my dad knows about. He's like, oh yeah, Astro Boy. And I was like, what is Astro Boy? But I remember him talking about it when my dad found out that my brother and I were watching anime. He's like, oh, Astro Boy. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And he's like, oh, it's kind of like, futuristic, and he's a boy robot. And you're like, okay. So I don't know. I don't know much about Astro Boy other than that, and that it's from the 50s, and Urasawa could have been influenced by it, but I don't want to know too much. I want to let this play out and see what we get. I'll tell you my theories throughout all of this, my theories of where we're going with this story, just based on things that I'm thinking of, because of the Astro Boy, and Adam, I think, is the name of a character in that series. If Urasawa is drawing influence from it, I'm wondering if the boy is, hear me out, we're going to have some light monster-esque spoilers throughout this. Very light, nothing plot revealing. But in Monster, there's a talk about, about children and adults alike having good and evil inside of them, and being capable, that both adults and children are capable of doing cruel things. And that's just like a light theme and Monster. So the idea that this boy gives Gessick a very creepy look at the very end, and I'm like, is this boy connected to what's going on? His name is Adam, and I think Atomic Bomb. And I think if you're talking about something that can destroy robots, maybe, but then again, I'm like, well, how does that even work? What does that even do? So there is some mystery there where I'm like, I don't know exactly what's going on, and we have to figure it out. But we're gonna put Adam up here as kind of our case in point. So we have this boy named Adam, this boy that Gessick knows or has met. Okay, what is his relevance going to be in all of this? What is his relevance going to be? We have yet to learn. I don't know. But oh my gosh, watching this, we're just gonna go through in linear order. Watching this series, seeing like updated like CGI blended with animation, so fluid. There were some parts of this that, because Monster, if you watch that series, the camera work is very fluid. There's some moments where it gets faster paced and some moments where it slows down and does these very, like, the way that the camera work and cinematography of the series is, it can be very haunting and creepy at times without seeming like it's intending to be, but it is. And this series is the exact same thing. There were some like shots and zoom arounds and stuff that I'm like, oh, this feels very creepy, and just adds that layer of suspense. The whole time we were there with Duncan and Northern number 2, I was like, I am tense the whole time because I keep thinking something's gonna happen. And starting out with this fire, very interesting. It almost felt like before you figured out that the world is like, this is cyberpunk and they're like, we're robots and everything. I got like Iron Giant vibes. The Iron Giant vibes also got vibes of, oh gosh, what is it? Again, like the Rocket Man, or oh gosh, what is it called? Oh, he's like the Human Rocket or something. I get the Rocketeer, maybe. I got vibes from that. And then we have the doctor that's looking for his child, his robot, Mont Blanc, and Mont Blanc's been destroyed. So we have these robots are seemingly connected by, there's these pair of horns, which the Pluto emblem has horns on it. That's all. I'm not gonna watch the OP. The moment that I saw some manga panels in the OP, I was like, oh, I don't want to watch this because it's probably gonna spoil things. But we have this idea of Pluto, which is the god of death, right? And the Hades, the horns, the devil, everything. Urasawa likes a good devil theme, right? And monsters and everything, which is fun. It's exciting. Monster, again, without spoiling anything, Monster's very realistic. Very realistic show. This, I like that Urasawa is getting to play around with sci-fi, with some elements of cyberpunk, with just some things that are not quite as realistic, but doing it in a way that's really fun and cool. I like it, right? But yeah, our Swiss robot here. So I want to go back and look at the dream that Gessick has, right? Because they find the remnants of Mont Blanc leading up to his head being skewered on the horns, right? Yeah. And the music swells and then fades. We have this dream or this nightmare that Gessick has. They establish in this episode that robots do have dreams and nightmares. And as Northern Number 2 says, the nightmares are typically just memories played back over and over again. So what Gessick is experiencing is some form of memory. We also establish a couple things. So we have the idea that robot dreams are reoccurring events. It's not quite like Sigmund Freud, where he's like, oh, it's enveloped in reality. For a robot, it is. And then we also have the idea that robots can wipe memories, which I don't like the idea of memory wiping. I don't like that at all. I love when the robot woman, the robot wife is like, I don't want to forget Robbie, my sweet Robbie. I don't want to forget him. So that's interesting. But I love the idea of memories. And as we see with Duncan and Northern Number 2, memories have a huge impact. And memories we'll talk about it when we get to Duncan, but Urasawa likes to play with the idea of memory and how it's not always accurate and how remembering things in a different way can impact our experience. And so we see that with Duncan, where Duncan can't quite remember the melody. And then Northern Number 2 goes and investigates and finds out all this information that Duncan didn't know that completes the story for him. And it's like, oh. But yeah, so we have this idea. There's a road. There's a road he's speeding up to. Like there's like headlights and a road. Headlights and a road. And then from the road that he's traveling on, we have this explosion, right? This explosion, and then a man panting. There's blood everywhere. And then as he gets near the blood, he starts to be affected by it. And then there's the explosion again, and then he wakes up. So my initial theory was that Gessick is the one killing the robots, and he just doesn't remember it. That was my initial theory, that Gessick just doesn't remember killing the robots, and that he's the one responsible. So I don't know if, it's a kid or a man or a robot or whatever. They say this seems like a kid, but then they establish that the person leaping from building to building is not human and is not a robot. So I was thinking like a cyborg. Is there a possibility to be like a human that's been embedded with cybernetic technology? I don't know. It seems like there's not in this world integration between humans and robots. It seems like it's either there are humans, there are robots. There's nothing mixed together. In Astro Boy, they're mixed together. Like I remember the boy is a robot, like Pinocchio. It's kind of like Pinocchio from what I remember of being told about it. So I don't know if this kid is going to be like kind of a Pinocchio where he's a robot too, like Gessick, or what the case. Or it could be that Adam maybe knows the robot or whoever that's destroying the other robots? I don't know. We're going to find out. I don't want to know, so I know y'all are going to sit on your hands and be like, but please no spoilers. We'll figure out as we go. But the point is that Gesic's like, and then in true Urasawa fashion, there's a dang cross right on his face in the shadows. Right on his face. Now, he's in bed with his wife. The thing I don't know about is his wife a robot too? Does she know her husband is a robot? Is she okay with this? I mean, I'm very curious about all this. He's like, oh, I'm fine. She's like, you've been so tired lately. Hope you're not working hard. I'm like, does she know he's a robot? Does she have any idea? I have so many questions. I'm like, my mind got in the gutter for a minute when I realized that he was a robot. I'm like, does she know he is? Have they been intimate? Is this a thing? Is she a robot? They make it sound like whatever model he is very advanced and not just something that's walking around. Like even the inspectors are like, oh, wow, we've not seen one like you before. So that makes me think that she's not a robot. So like, girl, do you just have like your very own husband that is also a robot? So I don't know. I guess we're going to find out, right? Maybe, I don't know how he could hide that from her, but he's very convincing. Maybe they've not been married that long. I don't know. But so within the Blaze Ring of Destruction, they found a dismembered Mont Blanc, the guide without equal. So yeah, so the thing about it is Gesic seems like kind of disturbed by this, which knowing he's an inspector now, he probably knew he was going to get called on the case. I love the orange suit that he has. Like the orange suit is such a great color. It's so neat, right? And also like expresses caution and it just makes him look different. But Urasawa, you guys should have known I would instantly be attracted to Gesic. He's a blonde with a big nose and he's tall and buff. Urasawa's checking off all my boxes. I'm all here for Gesic. And he's like, oh, we'll go on vacation soon, which is like instant plot point of we're not going on vacation anytime soon. Right? Not at all. And he goes through town. I just love the animation on the inspectors and everything. So he's from Europol. He's been sent in. He's Gesic. He's a robot. Wallace is like, oh my God, what do we do here? So we have this one guy that has been murdered, that's a human, and we don't know exactly why. Why has this human been murdered in such a way? And why was it a battle? What happened? What's going on? Why did they make the horns jabbed in their head? What do we do with this? There's so much to ask. So why? We know that there's a human. So we know that Mont Blanc is one of the 6. And we know that Northern Number 2 is the other one of the 6. And we know that the one robot that's like Silence of the Lambs, like serial killer robot, we'll get his name up here, that we have, there's like 6 of them. And then there's this human that was lanky. Was that right? This human killed. I love a good mystery. I like that we're getting all this interesting stuff going on. I'm like, who are they? What's happening? I like Gesic's on the case. I just love crime noir mixed with cybernetic sci-fi Blade Runner. I'm all here for it. I'm like, yes, give me this Blade Runner-ness. I love this. It's so good. And they're like, someone attacked at the checkpoint. And then they see that the one guy, it's amazing that the guy lives, but Robbie, the constable bot, gets destroyed. Interesting. And that he was beaten up. A police robot could be destroyed so easily because they were distracted. Okay. It's very interesting because already in this series, they establish there's this segregation of robots and humans, which you can substitute the segregation with literally anything you like. But it's so fascinating because even though there's this clear segregation, they're both working together. Both sides are working together. And when we see them by themselves, this episode proves there are clear similarities between the artificial intelligence and the humans. that is so fascinating. Like the fact of the woman with her robot with Robbie. And he goes, the animation of Gessick walking to the cathedral is just like, so it feels unnatural. And then when you see that he's a robot, you're like, of course it feels unnatural because he's actually a robot. Insane. Like, has this gun on him. He's like top of the line. And he manages to corner the one guy, the drug addict, and knows about the drug that he's addicted to and everything. Like, the whole animation of that sequence was so good. Bernard Lanky. Yes, so Lanky's his name, Bernard. So they're like trying to tie up and figure out what's going on with that murder. And then he goes to the robot wife who looks like Short Circuit. I'm like, oh my God, I love Short Circuit. So that movie from the 90s, and she looks like it. And so she talks about how they say we robots can upgrade our senses or refine them by interacting like humans. So she's like, if we put ourselves in human shoes and act like them, we'll refine our senses to imitate them better. And I'm like, that's so crazy, right? So crazy. You know what this is like? And I said this in the reaction. This is like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. If you've not seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it came out in 1988, year I was born. And I love that movie. It's live action blended with animation. And it's about a detective who is kind of like Gessick. He's a detective and he is put on the scene to go and look after the murder of a cartoon. And so it's these cartoons and humans living in the same world and having to interact with each other while there is clear segregation between the two groups. And here you have robots and humans. There's clear segregation between the two groups. The thing that's fascinating is that right now, it's not like Gessick has to work with many humans. Maybe Adam is a human that he has to work with. Maybe he'll have to work with this little boy to solve a crime. I don't know. The boy is clearly going to be important. We just don't know how yet. But what I like about it is that it shows like the cartoons in Who Framed Roger Rabbit are like people, but they are different. And the robots are kind of the same way. The idea is like, can a tune feel? Can a robot feel? Well, they can dream. They have repeated memories. They have a sense of identity. They have a sense of relationship with their fellow robots and with humans. And they have longing and desires, like Northern Number 2. We'll talk about Northern Number 2. That is the cutest thing and the creepiest thing. And I fell in love with him and now he's gone and I hate it. Curse you, Urasawa, for getting me attached to this damn robot you just killed. So yeah, this is so fascinating to me watching Gessick like interact with her. And you could tell like she's really sad that her husband, Robbie the robot, is dead. She's like, I don't know why them drinking tea is a comfort to them, but they do. And she's like, I work as a maid for this family. But when she talks about the child having a dog and the dog dying, then it's like Gessick understands the emotion she's going through. And he's like, I can erase the memory of Robbie if you want. But when she says not one memory, she's like, I don't want you to erase anything. She says, no. She's like, not one memory. I don't want you to erase it. Like us getting to see the robots and how they have their own like thought processes and feelings and ways of processing emotions. It's just different than humans, but it's still processing emotions. It's kind of insane, right? So the murder victim is Bernard Lanky, and they go back and talk that he's an robot law advocacy group member, right? Just so happens to be. I'm sure there are plenty of people out here with no love for a scholar who pushed hard for robot rights. So Lanky he's been killed and he was a robot advocate. Okay. So whoever the killer is, obviously, unless this is pure coincidence, but it does not seem to be pure coincidence, somebody is trying to like maybe hinder robot rights. I don't know how that works. And then it's interesting because so far, Mont Blanc and Northern Number 2 are robots that were weapons in the 39th Asian War. And then they were repurposed to have lives that were no longer being used as weapons. So, but they clearly are very strong, potentially strong enough robots that could be weapons of mass destruction that are getting disassembled. It's interesting because it's like you have this Avenger-style team of 6 robots who have the capability of annihilating a world, but they've kind of all developed so far of the 2 that we've seen. We'll talk about the serial killer one. But the 2 that we've seen that kind of don't want to do that anymore. They're sources of peace, not destruction, and somebody has destroyed them. So are they just getting rid of competition? Are they planning an attack and they want the 6 strongest robots out of the picture? Because that's all that could stop them? That's leaving a lot up to be determined, right? So it's like the body was found in the following condition. And then, yeah, and they talk about the advocate there. And then I like the idea of the memory chip in Gessic's, like, behind his ear being used to put in and show Mont Blanc that this is beyond human capability. So what did they say here? They said here, what the hell are you suggesting? You know where I'm going with this. And he's like, I do. The International Robot Laws, Article 13. No robot can harm or murder a human. But if there's a robot out there that's found a way to murder human beings at will, then we're right back to where we were 8 years ago. So 8 years ago, we've established that 8 years ago, there was this article made to stop robots from killing humans. Now, I don't know. I'm assuming that means that there's some programming done to where robots can't do that anymore. They're no longer capable of killing humans. They just have to, like, kill other robots, I guess, or solve a problem to save humans without hurting anybody. But they're saying that if some robot can kill humans, because this is a human that's died, not the other robots, then it's going to cause a big problem and people are going to start wondering what in the world's going on. So yeah, so then we have Gessick meeting the dad of Mont Blanc, and he gives a history of him, of how all these people loved him. And they talk about how he, like, cleaned up, he got all these terrorists arrested without harming anyone. He was a peacekeeper in the Alps. He reminds me a lot of Android 16 from Dragon Ball Z, especially with the birds, right? Yep. R.I.P. Akira Toriyama made me think of that. And he's got just the overalls on, and he's this peaceful robot. And of course, all these people love him because he's the symbol of peace. And he has these green eyes. I noticed a lot of characters in this series have green eyes so far, which is interesting. But they said it was a freak tornado that destroyed him. But that wasn't the case. And the man that made Mont Blanc would like to just destroy that person with their bare hands. So supposedly there's this tornado and this storm that is destroying them. The only thing I can think of is that maybe the storm, the quote-unquote storm, has, like, some kind of capability to jam signals or to jam the robots from being able to move, and that allows whatever the threat is to destroy the robots. I don't know. That seems like the logical thing, and the storm is like a cover so that you can't see it. I don't know. Interesting. But yeah, so in any case, then we go back to the dream, right? He says, that's not what killed him. Catch whoever did this to my boy. It felt very Godfather-like, right? Find them and I'll beat them bloody with my own hands. And Gessick's like, As the pride of Switzerland and the world at large, Mont Blanc will live on forever, cherished in the memories of those who knew him. The idea of memory keeps coming up, which is really interesting. But then we have Gessick recalling the blood on the ground, whatever that entails, and he keeps going back to that memory and the flames and the fire. Interesting. And that's when Dr. Hoffman's like, I wish you would just tell me about your dreams so I could, like, go through it. Gessick is a very well-built robot, by the way. I don't know how to feel about Dr. Hoffman. I feel a little suspicious of him. I don't know why. I think because I've watched too many series now that make me have trust issues with doctor characters. That may seem to be, I don't know. There's something about Dr. Hoffman's character that reminds me of a Banana Fish doctor, and the doctor in that Banana Fish series was no good. So his name is Abraham, if that helps. So go look that up. But I feel like the doctor here, Hoffman, reminds me a little bit of that banana fish character, so we'll see. But yeah, so they say that an electromagnetic wave anomaly made him self-destruct. And I don't know, it could be that there was an electromagnetic like pulse or something that did cause them to get disrupted so that whatever is in this storm could destroy him. That's very, very true. My question with that is like, why was Northern number 2 humming? Why were they singing in their final moments? It seemed like maybe they knew they were going to die, and so they were taking that opportunity to sing like their last tune before they perished, but they sang for a long time, so did they just know, or what was going on? I don't know. So fascinated. But yeah, Dr. Hoffman goes through all of that. They talk about his dreams, and he's like, you're so much like a human that you could get a sensory overload, so you might want to take a break. And then he suggests he go to Japan, which is interesting, which, you know, I feel like, I was going to say this in the opening scene where he's getting his breakfast with Helena, his wife. I feel like Urasawa did so much research for Monster, which takes place in Germany, that he has all this knowledge. And so he's just like, I've already done the research. Let me just apply this. He's like, I already know about the geography of Europe. I've already done a lot of research for Germany, for Monster, and all those surrounding countries. I'm just going to apply it to Pluto and just go from there. And do that. So that's why he did it. But he's like, you should go to Japan. And I was like, maybe he'll see Dr. Tenma there. And then later in this episode, I was like, which we'll talk about it when we get to it. But yeah, he's like, I'll run the idea past my wife. And then the doctor's like, okay, artificial intelligence supposedly has a subconscious element. Our dreams are more than just idle flights of the imagination. They express our reality. Gessick just looks so good. I love the way he's portrayed. And the idea that he took the memory chip out of Robbie and gave it to the robot wife. But for a split second, when he sees the robot and he's like, what are you going to do with Robbie? And the guy is like, oh, well, you could just take whatever parts you want. He's going to be scrapped anyway. That's when Gessick remembers something. He's like, the body's scrap at this point. And that's when he has this like flashback of this guy that looks like he's a janitor or something. And he's like, 50 Zeus a body. He's like, what do you say? So I don't know what Zeus is. Zeus is like the god of thunder. 500 Zeus a body. Zeus is a god of thunder, which could relate to the storm. So is that a subtle hint of something that's going to relate to the storm and everything? But who is this man? Why is Gessick remembering him all of a sudden? Is it from... They've talked about how the robots are often recycled. So is he made from recycled material? Was he one of these 6 robots and just doesn't remember it and has had his memory wiped? There's a lot we don't know yet. There's a lot we don't know yet, but he gives the memory chip to Robbie's wife, and then she asks him to insert it so she can play back the memories. And that's when they notice he was killed because he was distracted by what was happening at Lanky's apartment. So, and so they do the visual, and it's something. My thing was, when they do the visual, let me go back to that moment where they like zoom in. It's something flying, which is why I was like, is it the Astro Boy thing? So I don't know if it was that. They're like, oh, it looks like something flying, but it almost looked like a flea. Like you could see a body, but then there were like legs dangling. So I don't know. Or is it when they zoom in on it, when they zoom in to see what it is, I want to like see what that looks like when they zoom in. When they do the zoom, I'm like, it could be, they're like, they went over all the footage. It's not a bird, but no one may mention that shot. And they're like, well, unless you had the memory chip inserted, you wouldn't see something so brief. Yeah. So it looks like, I don't know. I'm getting Akira vibes too. And I don't know what to do with those. So it looks like it could be something carrying something else. It could be a cape. So it could be, that makes me think of Astro Boy. It could be like, but I don't think Astro Boy had a cape. But it could be like something flying in there. My question is, if it is related to like this kid, Adam, whose name is too unique and creative to not be of significance, is the question is why would Adam be doing any of this? That's the question. Is he the son of the devil? I don't know. I just am thinking of Monster and like the main antagonist of that series, being a frightful child. I'm like, okay, so I've got so many questions in my head, but I'm like, it's like the show is giving us tiny little puzzle pieces, but not enough to put together yet to form a very coherent picture. So I need to watch episode 2 to maybe find out something more about Lonky's death and like why, if this kid is involved, why? Why does that kid have to be involved? What's the point of it? And they're like, well, it's not a robot, it's not a human, so what do we do? So I love when he goes down, it's like Silence of the Lambs going down into the security to like into this detention center to talk to this serial killer robot. Insane. And I love when he walks past the aisle and it's just the eyes. The eyes all turn at the same time like surveillance cameras. So creepy. And they're like, he admits this magnetic ray that could scramble your AI if you get too close. And he's like, oh no, I'm made with a special alloy. I don't need those things. So he's been made with a special alloy and everything. I feel like he's one of the 6 and maybe just doesn't know about it because he seems like a pretty tough robot. Oh, but we'll see. And he's like, okay. He kind of looks a little bit like Lunge from Monster 2, the guy that he talks to, the security guard. But then he comes in and sees the barricade. The humans threw together this pile of junk. I love his sinister laugh. It's like, oh my gosh. I also like how these robots just have random names. They're not connected. So we have Brow. We have Brow 1589 is our third one of the 6, who's our serial killer robot. I just love it. I was instantly getting, when he descended into the detention center, I very much got Neon Genesis vibes. And the moment we see this white figure like lanced up against something, almost crucified, with all of the wires and everything, and the green eyes too. Interesting. Like, I instantly thought of Neon Genesis. I was like, oh, this is so cool. And if you've watched Neon Genesis, you probably get the reference. But I was like, oh, that's so neat. But yeah, he's like, they won't kill him because they're too scared of him. And he's just sitting there lanced. Like, he just has these wavy arms and everything. And he's got the red thing draped over him like he's been crucified. Like, the symbolism. All the symbolism. And it's like these train tracks leading to him. I love this encounter where they're doing this. It felt very... He's like, it's more powerful than before. Oh, locked away and smashed half to hell as I am. I'm curious as what's happening in the world above. Okay. And so he's like, I've come to the underworld to ask a question. And he's like, there are no traces of another human there. So what do we do with that? He's like, they were sure that a defect was to blame, but no. What does he say here? Because he's like, you know, traces of another human. Interesting. He's like, the killer human, or was it a robot? And if it was a robot, then why would it do such a thing? Just between us, the humans examined every last bit of it. I love, he's like, my murderous artificial intelligence, that is. They were sure there was a defect to blame, but there was nothing wrong with me. This was the part that was terrifying, is that this robot Brow is suggesting that he killed people, and they tried to detect if there was something with his AI that caused it, and there was nothing to be detected. And it's like, So it's like, it's basically establishing these robots have souls, or have their own agency or identity, have a consciousness, and it does not have to be, it can't be explained. It's just part of who they are. And that's terrifying because it's a robot and it's much stronger than humans. So of course people would be terrified. He's like, they're afraid to pull out just this spear and kill me off. And he's like, Inspector Gessick, if you want to peek into the head of a robot who's committed murder, then you just exchange memory chips with me. I love this idea that the robot tempts him, being like, come and look inside my brain, see what's there, I'll show you. And Gessick's like, no. Gessick's like, I don't want to do that. No, thank you. I have enough problems with nightmares. I don't really want to think of anything else. So he gives him the thing with the horns. And that's when they come up with the idea of the god of the dead, Pluto. He looks like he was ripped apart like a child's toy. So like a handful of robots was created with the best technologies the world had to offer. So it's not necessarily that the 6 robots they were all war machines or they were all used in the war and then became these martyrs for peace. That's not exactly the case. It's the idea that there are 6 robots made with the best technologies in the world. Well, I would think that Gessick would be one of them. Gessick seems pretty advanced. So we're just going to put him down here as maybe the 6th that's going to be targeted, and maybe he doesn't realize it yet. I don't know. Because he says that Mont Blanc was one of them robots who can also be weapons of mass destruction. You already know who else is in the crosshairs, don't you? There are 6 of them left, present company included. Okay, so present company included could mean him and Gessick. And then there's 2 others other than Northern number 2. Okay. And then there's these eyes looking at it. Okay. Interesting. Almost like a bird. And then he got chopped away. Yeah. So with this only having 8 episodes, it makes sense there's still potentially 2 robots we haven't met yet that we're going to meet that are going to be targeted. Possible. So then we cut to the rest of this episode. That was like the first half hour that we had there. And to set all this up, that something is targeting the 6 most powerful weapons of mass destruction robots in the world and trying to destroy them. Something's targeting them. And we don't know why. We don't know who. But we get to meet the second one, other than Mont Blanc. We just get to hear about Mont Blanc's legacy. They seem like the most peaceful teddy bear of the group. Maybe not as interesting. We kind of know their backstory. Then we meet Northern number 2. Northern number 2 is so freaking cute and adorable and just awkward, and I love him so much. This big towering specter that looks like a Grim Reaper, but is like his little mouth of a man. Oh, his design, like he wears the cloak to hide all of his weapons underneath him. Oh my God. And the idea that he's helping Duncan, who is this composer that's lost his way. There's so much to love about this entire scene. There's so much to love about it. The idea that Duncan hates robots, that he hates automation, that he's this old man that hates technology, he hates change. He's trying to hold on and grip the past and not let go of it because he's afraid that if he loses those memories, he has nothing left in the present because he was consumed by the past and learning the music. Oh. And I love the idea that he just has this piano. I was waiting for Northern number 2 to comment about the piano because he doesn't keep all the technology. He trashes the technology that can create artificial sound, as he tells Northern number 2, which is fair. It is an artificial sound. But when he says they're just machines, I kept waiting for Northern number 2 to be like, well, the piano's a machine. It's just a little bit more archaic. It's not as fancy with electronics, but it's still a machine to create something that's a sound. And I was waiting for him to say something about that, but he didn't. But this little story of the 2 of them is amazing. It's just this story of this old man trying to piece together his memories of what's been left behind. And he ends up with this butler because he's like, I served previously as a butler of the commander-in-chief of the British Army for the entirety of the 39th Central Asian War. And he's like, oh, butler for a soldier, huh? And I don't imagine you're much to look at, are you? I'm like, oh my God. But I love their relationship because Northern number 2 is just so sincere and he's just so blunt and he's just like, yes, I'm here to be your butler and you know, just to help you. And Duncan wants nothing to do with him. But then he develops this friendship with him and they both kind of realize that you have Duncan who is haunted. He's haunted by his past and fading memories. Which is funny because then you have a Northern number 2 who is haunted by his past and memories that he can't escape. And so when he says, I don't want to go back to the battlefield, he's like, I know how many soldiers I've killed. I know what I've done. But I want to be a butler. I don't want to go back to that ways. I want to change who I am so I don't ever have to go back to that life. And that's why he wants to learn the piano and wants to do those things. It's so beautiful and fascinating because Northern number 2 is such like, it's this metaphor for this veteran that's come back from the war, and he doesn't want to go back to the life he once was living. He's trying to integrate himself into society and do something new that gives his life purpose and meaning. And it's so beautiful. And he's this little robot that's with this blind composer who's lost his way, and they both help each other. Oh my God. The whole thing with the tea where he was like, this tea is just like you. It's just a piece of shit. And he just throws it away. Oh, and his little gangly arms. Everything about this entire scene with them, the story with them, was beautiful. I loved every second of this. I was so drawn in, and him just sitting there like just watering the plants. As soon as the most mundane things. It was so good. And then him just telling him, trying to learn the piano and not taking it seriously when he tells him to stay away. Oh. And then knowing, you know, the dreams that Noah the number 2 has, and he's trying to move past them. And then him like recalling the humming that Duncan's having in his sleep. Like, they're so similar. Just the similarities between the robot and him. It's beautiful. And he just keeps getting mad because he keeps playing the piano. And then eventually he's like, the animation of when he's a kid, the animation of when Duncan is a kid, and just the flashback made me want to cry so hard because of how beautiful it was and the animation for it. Oh my God. Urasawa. Urasawa has such a distinct design for their characters. It's just, you just get to know these characters so much and you fall in love with them. And just the idea of him just sitting there like Duncan sits there like a Grim Reaper the entire time. I kept wondering if or number 2, Nor the number 2 just stands there like a Grim Reaper the entire time. I kept wondering if Duncan was going to die. If that was going to be, you knew at some point during this there was going to be a twist. And something was going to happen to one of these characters. And so I was like, is Duncan going to die? And that's going to be the case. I kept wondering if whoever murdered Mont Blanc and Lanky was going to show up at the mansion and kill Northern number 2 there. I kept wondering, like, is Northern number 2 going to kill Duncan? It's going to be like a bait and switch. No, Northern number 2 is the most sweet robot ever, despite the fact that he was created as a weapon of mass destruction. Oh my God. But it's this sweetest relationship, and the animation, everything was like a damn movie. It was so beautiful. I loved it. And then he has this this Orson Welles like style, like just trashing the room, and he yells to get, like, he takes out all his frustration on Northern number 2, and Northern number 2 is just like, okay, I'll take it. And then he tells the story about his mom and how he believed his mother abandoned him to go with this suitor. And now he's beat up in school, and then he got sick. And here's the thing. He got sick, and then they said that this Japanese doctor came in. I was forgotten and forlorn. And then the moment that he says, that's when a Japanese doctor walked into my room. And he's dressed in all black, saying he didn't have a license, but lost causes were his specialty. So here's the thing. He said, I'm going to save your life, young man. But the procedure itself could leave you blind in the bargain. Now, there's a couple things I thought. First of all, watching Monster, the main character is a doctor, a Japanese doctor. So I was like, oh, is this a reference to Monster? Could very well be. The second thing was I wondered if, for a second, if Northern number 2, because he has the face of a man, the mouth of a man, I wondered if he was the doctor before he became a robot. That was my crackpot theory. And then I wondered if maybe this doctor, this Japanese doctor, is somebody that we're going to see in the future. Maybe he becomes a cyborg or something. Maybe he's the one responsible for this. We don't know. The show hasn't given us all of that, but it could just have been a reference to Monster. Although Northern number 2 does tell Duncan that the Japanese doctor overpriced the procedure, and that's why the mom had to get all the money to pay him. I was like, that doesn't sound like something Dr. Timmo would do. So must have been just a reference. Just a Monster reference while we're here. Why not? And then the imagery of him losing his sight and then slowly getting to where he couldn't see it is terrifying. I don't know. Everybody always asks, they're like, would you rather not hear or rather not see? That's really hard. That's a really hard question, because I feel like I like so much that's visual. I feel like I could lose my hearing and be okay because there's subtitles and there's, you know, there's subtitles, there's braille, there's ways you can read lips. There's ways to interact with people. I think if you're, you know, deaf, more so than if you are blind. I wouldn't want to lose my sight. That'd be awful. That'd be awful. And I have bad eyes anyway. So it's always like a gnawing like fear of me losing my eyesight and being like, oh no. Hopefully by the time I am old enough to have that issue, they will have found something to fix that. Give me some special contacts. Come on, future tech. Let's get sickening. But this memory where he keeps, the way that Duncan remembers things is that his mom abandoned him and he can't ever finish the melody because it's just too sad. He doesn't want to remember it. He keeps thinking that remembering it fully will only bring pain to him. And Northern Number 2 convinces him, no, you need to remember. Just like how that moment where he said, I have to remember my dreams and I have to keep playing me killing those robots over and over again in my mind. That's what keeps him from doing it again. Because it's like Northern Number 2 is like seeing those robots die and be destroyed keeps me from going out and doing it again. Because I don't want to go back to the battlefield. And that reminds me why I don't want to go back to the battlefield. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh, just insane, right? Just crazy town, right? Oh my God. So that just blew me away. And then he tells Duncan, he's like, you don't need to forget things because those memories are worth keeping. And that's when he goes and finds the research and finds the complete story again and helps him to finish the melody and remember things fully. I'm like, oh, this was just like a movie. I absolutely loved it. I love the idea of the phone that's just like a disc and you put your hand over it and it pops somebody's face up. That's a lot of fun. And then there's like these people that want to use his old works and borrow the rights to them to use in their movies and stuff. And he's like, but I could compose new works. And they're like, well, we thought you were retired, or no, we don't think you're worth collaborating with anymore. We just want to use your old stuff that's tried and true. And he's like, because it kind of takes away from his meaning as a person anymore. Right. And I hated that for him. I wanted Duncan to like be like, screw you, I'm going to make my own new works. And he has this beautiful garden, these beautiful gardens with all these flowers and everything, but he has nobody to share all of this with. And then he had Northern Number 2, but damn it, something killed Northern Number 2. No. I hate it. And then Duncan gives him the information about his memories to fill it all in. I wish we could see what Northern Number 2's face looks like. I hope they'll show us next episode, maybe. And then he gives him all the info, and the woman humming, the mom humming with him, and him crying. He's like, "How could I forget?" And he's like, "I apologize, sir, for how I sang it." Yeah, when Northern Number 2 sang, it was like just like a robot, like. Yeah, I thought for a second, I was like, is it gonna be beautiful or is it gonna be as bad as you think it's gonna be? And it was bad as you think it's gonna be, but oh my God, And I was just getting to love Duncan and Northern Number 2's friendship. And I was loving Northern Number 2 so much. And then they're together for like an entire winter. And we see them like together, like playing the piano, having this great time, being everything so beautiful. And then damn it, whatever this is comes and kills Northern Number 2. Why? Why? What does he say? What did he talk about there? Something about the Alps. He says, I'm picking up something approaching at high velocity. And then he says, like, what? And he's like, maybe one of your robot friends is paying you a visit. Ha, ha, ha. And he says, a few days ago. Okay, so an event up in the Alps a few days ago. Okay, so for all we know, there's only been a few days past between Gess getting on the case, Mount Blanc dying, and now Northern Number 2 die. But this timeline took us back like months prior to this event when Northern Number 2 showed up at Duncan's house. And Northern Number 2 was a butler for a commander-in-chief. So these high-profile robots are getting targeted because they're weapons of mass destruction. But we're finding out they're actually like peacekeepers, so what's happening? It's like we're keeping the Avengers from assembling. And then he goes up into the storm. He like blows off. He like lifts off, leaves his legs behind. and then goes up there to battle whatever's up there in the clouds. And there's all this stuff happening, like all of these explosions, all this is going on. And then he starts to sing as the sky clears. And he explodes. He says, "You were singing our song with such feeling." I was like, damn it! Urasawa, why are you making Duncan and Northern number 2 like platonic soulmates? Why? Urasawa got me to be super connected to a robot in 40 minutes and then murdered him in front of me. Better not be doing this shit with Gessick. I already like Gessick a lot. Don't hurt him. Leave Gessick alone. Spare Gessick. He's so sweet. No. And he's like, come back. Northern number 2, come back. As his like legs and cape are sitting beside him in ashes. He's like, come on. Don't be late for your piano lesson. I was like, oh my God. So why? Okay. So then we have, we go back. He's like, hurry on home now. How dare you, show? How dare you? Gonna be late to piano practice as he like falls from the sky in like a burning comet. I feel like Gessick's gonna have to go and investigate there, or find out what's going on. But Duncan's a recluse. They may not know until it's too late. So meanwhile, it's raining and Gessick is going down the street, right? He's going to work and there's all these kids that are going as he walks by. And then he stumbles next to this one kid who is like running and he kicks this rock. And then when he stops, he like goes to pick it up and he sees this snail. Yeah, just a random snail, no big deal. He's like, "Oh, you found a snail, did you?" And the kid's like, "I did." And then he just kind of wipes his hand, looks very nonchalant. And he's like, "Oh, it's nice to meet you." He's like, "I believe your name is Adam, right?" And the kid says, "Uh-huh." So how does he know his name is Adam? Does he just... I don't know. How does he know his name is Adam? Does he know because he can automatically tell he's a robot? Fascinating. I don't know. Oh my God. So I don't know. The look of the boy, I know that Astro Boy has black hair, but it's in like a point, isn't it? Right? Is Astro Boy's hair like the devil horns? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm all about a good mystery. I feel like there are clues that have been sprinkled about so far, but nothing's connecting yet. And I'm like, I want it to connect so badly, but I don't know. So this was just, it was literal art. Honestly, it was literal artwork. It was gorgeous. It was poignant. It was everything I wanted it to be. And I'm so sad Northern number 2 is dead. I'm not over it. I'm not going to be over it for a while. Like, Mont Blanc seemed like a great, lovable robot, but I'm glad we didn't get to know him because otherwise I would have been like heartbroken. And I'm heartbroken for Northern number 2. I'm already heartbroken. How dare. So I don't know how long I'm going to wait before I watch episode 2, but please no spoilers, hints, or clues. I'm so excited to see what happens with this series. We'll just have to see. So in the meantime, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction discussion. We have 7 more episodes to find out what's going to happen in this series. I'm super excited. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Pluto. Bye!